Hello and welcome to the Bee Formless Flow Driven VC podcast. I have from North Carolina in I won't say small, but an area called Pinehurst, which is a golf community from what I understand. So I think we've got a bit of a golfer here with us
Mhm.
today, which is David Horne. Welcome, David, to the show.
Oh, thanks. Thanks for having me, B.
Yeah. And I love your I was just looking at your picture behind you. Is that like a golf picture
Yeah,
as well?
so that's a local course where I grew up. My mom painted it, and so
Wow.
the truth be told, there's a mirror behind when we bought the house. This mantle is like a antique mantle, and it has a mirror in it. And if I'm on a Zoom call or something, you get kind of like the infinite mirror screen.
Right.
If So I put that picture up,
Yeah,
but it
very
is
cool.
nice. It reminds
Very
me
cool.
reminds me
Yeah,
of home. So,
very cool. Well, we're gonna have quite the chat, I think. You're the co-founder and managing partner of Calm Capital, and I really like the name of it. I'm going to ask you in a bit where
sure.
Calm came from because it feels very calm. Which is a US-based firm that buys and stewards specific and essential software and services businesses.
Hmm.
Calm Capital's portfolio includes judicial systems, so jury management, court tech, Honestly, which is creative services, which is such a interesting name for a creative services brand as well. I'm not suggesting creatives aren't services aren't honest, but honestly, I love that. And a minority stake in Disctopia, sorry, which is a create a podcast platform. Well, kind of here we are. I've already
Yep,
got
yep.
50 million questions for you. Your team previously led Loft, which was is a maintenance as a service for web apps. And David, you also write at davidhorn.me and have
Mhm.
background in marketing and creative agencies. There's a lot in there. Have
Yeah,
you
I mean, my first career was a failed professional golfer, so that's
really?
yeah. So I ran out of talent and money, and so I had to do something else. So that's how I kind of got into the marketing work. But I was a my uncle had a marketing agency in the '80s, and he was like a madman from the '50s, and gave me Jack Trout books and you know Bill Burnback books and all these things when I was a kid. So I was kind of always on the creative side, more on the copywriter side. And then so when golf didn't work out, that was a natural fallback.
Wow. So tell us a bit about that then. So like how long were you playing golf for? And then what was that defining moment? Like, I don't think you ever fail. I think it's more that you learn and you kind of go, all right, that didn't work, so let's just try something different.
Yeah.
Like what happened there for you?
Yeah, I mean, I had I was okay junior, had a good college career, tried to play after, and Um, I never like, you learn so much hindsight, obviously, from a business standpoint, but I didn't raise enough capital to play full time for long enough to keep improving. And so I made cuts, but never made it to where I never stayed long enough to where I made it to kind of the end of my, I guess, improvement or talent level or skill level.
Yeah.
And kind of along that in that process of traveling and staying in, small hotel rooms and all that kind of stuff, I met a girl and just was getting married. And the idea of being on the road a bunch and having a family was not as attractive as it was when I was,
No.
18, 19 years old.
Yeah.
So,
Don't you
so
think
that,
those sorts of things are like moments in time? Like I always think about it, right? Go, well, that was a moment in time. That was like awesome. Like I was doing golf or I was doing whatever I was doing. But then you meet somebody or something happens and it's like, okay, well, you know what? What's next? What am I going to do next? And that for me is that whole, well, what shape am I forming next or what's going to happen next? So you've done golf. You haven't really failed. You've just more or less gone, all right, well, I haven't got the capital to master how far I want to take it. So then, and you've met your beautiful wife. And so then next so then you move into, is that when you moved into more of creative, knowing that your uncle was, a madman sort of inspo for you? Like what then happened?
yeah, I mean, I think because I was playing and teaching and golf, but I always had, even like towards the end of my college career or college enrollment, I had like some freelance stuff on the side where I would help people with marketing campaigns or whatever, because I was just kind of like an advertising nerd. And so I just kind of did that. And then when I, the golf was starting, that chapter was starting to close, I ended up at a software QA company as kind of their marketing director, but still kept freelance clients. And then when that job moved to northern or New England, I didn't want to move, and so they said, "Well, then you no longer work here." And so I found myself self-employed by way of not having a job. But then they hired me back to consult, and I was like, "Man, this consulting thing's not bad." So that was how it started. So I'd always had some freelance clients, but then I kind of made that a priority.
Yeah. And then what was it was like for you, what was that like? What was that like? Like just kind of moving into that sort of space. Like I guess probably a bit of a change from golf.
Yeah, a ton. I mean, a lot of change. You know, I mean, you have to figure out sales and managing clients and all that kind of stuff, which even though I had a lot of knowledge about advertising and marketing industry, I'd never worked in it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, fortunately I had friends and folks I had met who had experience and could help me out with things. And my best friend, who is my co-founder at Calm Capital, Marty, where I went kind of the golf route and then out on my own, he kind of climbed the corporate ladder as a software developer and then a development manager at a company, a division of Mitsubishi Caterpillar. And he was learning management, all these management skills and team building skills and so I would call him and be like, "Hey, how do I deal with this type thing?" Because he
How
was dealing
funny.
with it with his team. And so, I was really able to lean on him a lot because he was getting all this real, like, when I say corporate experience, I don't mean like in a negative sense. I mean, like the good parts of, like,
Yeah.
there's a reason big companies and bigger companies are, stick around for a long time. Like they have, real processes that work, and instead of me just kind of going all over the place. So that was super
Yes.
helpful.
It's so true. Like I was saying to you pre-show, I started my career in advertising as a dispatch girl, a mail girl, like franking
Yeah.
stamps, and like that was kind of like and kind of being
You
an
think of
agency.
The Secret of My Success with Michael J. Fox back in the 80s. I don't know
Yeah,
if you
well,
remember that.
exactly right. And it was fascinating for me, but it's exactly that, And I remember when I was within about 6 months of starting in the role, I moved into account management, and we used to have training, and we had to be at training at 8 a.m. every Wednesday morning, and it was how to present, how to dress. Like we had the full training, and I can
Mm,
honestly say back to your point around, the good stuff, that put me in such good stead as like knowing, the right way to write a brief, how to present, how to I mean, how to dress was a bit bizarre, but like if you think about it now,
mhm.
but it really did set me up for being like, a great client experience person because I was trained properly. And I think come such a long way these days because you look at so many of the younger ones and you're like, where's the training gone? Where's that pure training on how to be your best when it
Mhm.
comes to customer service? Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Well, Stephen Pressfield, the writer, has some books on. He had has a handful of books on writing, and one of the things he talks about is like the idea of going from like an amateur to a professional, and there are just like habits and things that a professional does that amateurs don't do. Same thing like with golf, right? Like when I was just playing in college and as a high school kid or whatever, it's basically like a really important hobby. But then once you become a professional, there are expectations, not all of them bad, on the way that you do the job
Mm,
to be professional. I think, like you're saying in the advertising side, there's a way to be a professional account person
mm.
or an exec or a senior leader in a business that's going to be around for a while that provides a lot of value to clients and the community and all that kind of stuff that there are just habits and disciplines there that, those are not always more like super popular words, but they matter.
Yeah, and I
As far
think
as being
discipline,
passionate.
I could not agree with you more, but it was discipline also. We had to show up. It was mandatory. If
Right.
you didn't show
Mm.
up, you like, it was just not, you just had to show up. So it was just
Hmm.
like one of those things, right? So you've got you as more the creative, more of the, explorer, if you like, in business, and
Hmm.
Marty, climbing the corporate ladder in capital. How did you two, and you've leaned on each other, no doubt. How did you two then come together in forming Calm Capital?
Yeah, it was about it was a 10-year conversation, but the short answer is we remained friends, even though he had, were in Greensboro, North Carolina, kind of starting our lives. He moved back to Michigan. We stayed in contact. We'd always talk about business ideas and things like that. He ended up leaving his job in corporate and starting a software consultancy with some friends, other friends. Um, I like hired him as a contractor as one of my what we call engagement leads at Honestly, because I had started Honestly by that time. And that was kind of like his transition to his software consultancy. And so then he was running a software consultancy with some friends. I was running Honestly, and these were both kind of consulting, professional services businesses, probably a lot like you did. We consulted clients and then we would do production work, creative, communications, software, whatever. Well, his firm was our number one like software partner to do code work, and we were their number one partner for user experience design and those types of things. But we would get together and we would talk about these businesses that have been around for 50, 60, 70, 100 years. And those were the things that excited us more than startups, even though we were trying to do the startup thing.
Thing.
And with, we had a bunch of different failed startups, from a golf startup to a contractor payments startup, a bunch of different things. And we said, man, wouldn't it be nice if we could own some of the businesses that we consult? Because before we started recording, I was asking you if there was ever that time where, you're providing advice and they don't take it.
Yeah, happens a lot.
They have the choice to not take the advice you have, which is fine. But over time, you're kind of like, man, if somebody would just do the thing that we recommend, then we all benefit, because no one likes to do work and not have it get into the world.
Agree.
So that was kind of the start of Calm Capital. So then we said, what if we pulled our equity in our businesses and started Calm Capital to go look for, uh, we call it specific and essential, but it's really vertical market software. Uh, and our kind of hypothesis, if that's way too strong of a word because it was not that scientific, but we said we hear all these things about baby boomers. The first generation of software founders is coming to retirement age. Let's see if any of those folks don't have succession plans and we could buy software businesses from retiring founders. So that was kind of
It's
how
very
we
cool
evolved.
because it's almost like regenerating those businesses from the yesteryear.
Right.
I'm sure that they pull through into what I like to call the new world order, which is ultimately what we're in, right? Because we're in this revolutionary time, AI and everything else. And we've got, I don't know how many generations have we got going at the moment in the workforce? It's like five or six or something. And there's so
Yeah.
much, I don't know about you, but there's so much experience from the boomers, even to now the alphas or the whatever the youngest generation is right now, to pull it all together. Like it's quite an exciting and pivotal time, don't you think? So what you're doing is fascinating because it is regenerating it and mixing the old to the new, but ensuring that you have all that expertise of the past to take it into the future. Is that kind of like where your thinking is? Your meant like what your plan is or
A
plan
hundred
was?
percent. Yeah, 100%. I think it's, we view ownership is really a misnomer. It's more stewardship. All leadership is temporary to some degree. At some point, you're not going to own the thing. You're either going to pass it on to someone or it's going to go away, or you're going to go away. Uh, so we kind of just say, well, these people have built these businesses, they've put their livelihoods, blood, sweat, and tears, they've made sacrifices for their families. Like maybe we can be a succession plan for them to keep it going, and then take what we've learned and in a lot of cases, you know, more not when I say modern, just more relevant or current practices. Because if you started a business 30 years ago, the judicial systems business you referenced earlier, we acquired two jury management software companies from retiring founders in their 80s. These businesses were almost 30 years old, software companies, 30-year-old software companies. And so they were good businesses. And we said, well, how can we take what we've learned and what we see and make these great businesses for beyond what we are even going to do? But our intent is to hold them for as long as we feel like we're going to be a good steward of that business and provide, value to the employees and the clients and the communities they serve. So that was kind of
It's
the
very
idea.
cool. And how long have you had Calm Capital for now?
We're in our sixth year. We started January 1st, 2020. So we're still figuring it all out. So
Yeah,
I don't,
because it's fascinating, right? You're like I think you're like one of the third or fourth people I've spoken to the past week who started their business in COVID. It's kind of
yeah.
crazy, right? You started it just before COVID and before the world ultimately blew up. Well,
Yeah.
when you booked in for the pod, and I want to get back to what this your business starting 6 years ago and still figuring it out. When you booked in for the pod, the question I ask everyone when they book in is what's one unique insight or lived experience in life, leadership, and or investing? And you said can't control the results.
Hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I get the feeling it's got a little bit to do with business, probably to do with golf. Just yeah, like
Yeah, there's a lot of it. I think I'll start with golf and I'll kind of evolve into business and just really just worldview a little bit. But in golf, you can only control so much of what happens. You can, pick a target and swing and hit the shot, but after you hit the ball, like you have no control over what it does when it lands. And even playing, you're playing against a bunch of other players. You have no control what they're going to do. You can't go influence them. It's not like basketball where you can play defense or something, or football where you can play defense, or rugby or whatever. So just so much is out of your control. And I had my identity, like basically through a lot of my youth, I had my identity so wrapped up into the results of, if I played well or if I didn't play well. And then, um, had a guy came to faith and had a guy disciple me through college and show me kind of where my identity came from. And the results are less important than the process and what you're trying to,
getting there.
you know. And so, from a business standpoint, and just how Marty and I look at these businesses, it's like we can only control so much of the businesses. We can't control if COVID comes or if government decides to, put this factor in place, or there's, community media does this. I mean, like you can't control any of those other things, but what we can control is like how we wake up each day and try to steward the business as well. And then the results will kind of be what they are. Um, and we're going to do the best we can with the controllables and accept the non-controllables. And so just like golf or whatever, that's just how we've approached it, which is a lot more freeing, and it helps you be a little more long term because we're not trying to get to some number in 5 years so that we could sell to private equity or, do something that's not in a long-term view of what's best for the business and the people involved. So that's really I mean, the simple answer to your question is the older I get, the more I realize how little control I really have over the
Anything.
actual outcome.
I agree. And you didn't like, I loved your answer. Thank you so much for that because it's so true. And it's always like you said to me before the show as well, take your own advice, like when it comes to like what I'm doing and but it's also listening and taking that advice because we get so caught up on getting or fixated on an outcome being attached to like, that A to B when everything is so non-linear, in terms of you might start here, but you might go over here, like a golf ball. Like such a good analogy, like, right? Like I'm not good at golf because of my eyes and I always miss hitting the ball. Like I'm the worst. So the ball doesn't even move when I try and hit it. Well, sometimes it does, but like you don't have any control of where, like you said, where that ball's going. It's going to get somewhere. It will land somewhere. You might get a hole in one or whatever, but at the end of the day, ultimately, it's going to go wherever it needs to go before it lands where it's going to land. And so we can try and control direct as much as possible, but I find the more you hold on, the more you try and control it, the less it does what you need it to do. And I agree, it comes with getting older and having the ability to kind of almost like surrender and go. My mum always uses the term control the controllable, and that's all you can
100%.
control. Like it's like some days it's just putting that one foot in front of the other to be able to get through the day. Do you know what I mean? Like it's such a good analogy. Because COVID, like, how do we know that that was going to do what it did? And it's the same with business. Like, I loved hearing, you've been in your business for 6 years, your most recent Calm Capital. And I love the fact that you are so humble in saying we're still figuring it out because, social media and things like that, it's such a facade. You go on and you're like, oh my God, everyone's like killing it. And you sometimes come off and you're like, why aren't I where they are or whatever? And I've been doing it, reflecting myself a lot lately, thinking, I should be here, I should be doing this, I should have this. And it's like, no, I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. I just need to let it happen the way it's meant to happen and unfold. But we get so fixated and attached to what society wants, the results of society and everything else. Do you
Right.
agree? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think again, it like knowing that you can't control the results doesn't like you detach that from the things you can control, like you just talked about. I mean, you can control like what you wake up and do every day. You can control directionally where you want to go and how you want to conduct yourself and those types of things. It's just you know, the numbers themselves or whatever. You don't. I mean, we can't force clients to say yes or force this person to buy, sell their business to us or whatever, right? So it'd be foolish to say we're going to go buy three businesses this year and this, vertical and all that kind of stuff. But what we can do is just say, hey, these are the resources we have. How do we steward these resources well? How do we treat people the way we think that, we'd like to be treated and then just keep making progress. I think now I do think like you can't control the total outcome, but if you're not producing kind of the fruit or making progress in the direction you want to go, then I think that is something that you can control, and that's when you might course correct
Yeah,
or
agree.
whatever.
The ability
But
to pivot. Yeah.
yeah, and you mentioned it, defining success is kind of a really good place to start because what does success look like to you? And if it is a number or something like that, then one, that could be very fleeting. What happens if you get it in 6 months? Then what do you do, right? Or if you never get it, you don't want to be feel like you've wasted. So, um, and I would say like kudos to you for the building a business and then embarking on something new and just like, hey, I'm just gonna walk through open the Marty, my business partner, who is, we kind of joke that together we like make a full person. He's about 85% of the talent and the skill. I'm about 15. But one of the things that he
You put
says,
yourself down too much, David. I think you
I
probably
mean,
add a lot.
yeah, but he is pretty amazing. But one of the things he says that I love that is a lot of how we operate is like we're just going to keep walking through open doors. If the door opens, we'll walk through it, and see what we can do, and if the door closes, then fine, you know. So going back to what you're saying, like when you're defining success as kind of the journey, which is pretty cliche, but it's very much true in the fact that if you're controlling what you can control and making, you know, progress, then that's a lot more fulfilling from a success standpoint than trying to reach a destination, kind of, if you will.
Yeah. And do you think that is a new form of success? Because I've really been focused on or thinking about how do we reshape what success looks like? You know, like when we climb that corporate ladder, we get to the top at times and it's kind of like then we look around and go, oh, it's like empty. I'm empty. I don't feel fulfilled. I'm not like I may have got to where I've got to, but I ultimately do not feel fulfilled because I've almost pursued things externally and thought that if I get to this step and then I get to that next step and I get here and I get here, I'm like chasing that outcome, like and you know, it's good to have goals, it's good to have intentions, outcomes,
Mhm.
etc. But I do think that we're at a point in time where, you know, there is this need for us all to be able to shape somewhat what success looks like that isn't that linear way of what we always thought success was because no one not many people are fulfilled when they get to where they get to, like, you know, it's almost like, is this it, like, you know? And so then how do you reshape it and how do you allow for more fulfillment, you know, still have all the success, but how do you have more fulfillment from the inside out versus the outside in? Like, I don't know if I'm making sense there, but I just think that it's really interesting, you know, in terms of COVID taught us a lot, and it was like almost like the world shut down for a minute to get us all to reflect a little bit and go, what's important? You know?
For sure. For sure. Yeah, well, and I think like you look at, you know, it's interesting when you look at like defining success. I think it has to come from a worldview or something that's outside of your, um, I don't know, like the temporal things. Where I'm going with this is if your success is coming from outside, you look to other places, like that's what success looks like, right?
Yeah.
Well, then you have no bearing on how they define success or how someone else defines success. So if they change what success looks like, well, now your whole definition of success is changed. If you do it from internally, well, how many times does success change in your what you think success looks like? Like if you were to ask me what to define success when I was 18 versus now, well, my desires, my things I think are important have changed. So then now you have a like an identity crisis internally. Well, now I don't know what success is and I'm not fulfilled, right? So I think you have to look at something that's you doesn't change that
Mm,
gives you a definition that you can um you know have that fulfillment that's kind of outside or beyond, you know, just what you can gain from it or just kind of
100%. 100%. Tell us about how did you come to the name, honestly? How did you come to the name Calm?
yeah.
You've got all these like really interesting brand names. How did you,
Yeah.
yeah, how did you come to these names? And then even Dystopia, like it's really interesting. Yeah, some of the names.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'll go in reverse. So Disktopia, so we had a company called Wave that was a podcast marketing software. Um, we again going back to stewardship, the industry and the customers it served, we realized after 4 years of owning the business, we bought it. We just weren't the best stewards of that business. Like it was in a higher growth type industry. And so we met some guys, a group of people that had a startup called Disktopia that was a streaming platform for podcasters, video, and all these kinds of things. And so we sold Wave to them and have a little bit of roll forward equity in that business. And so I'm an advisor, and but it is a very interesting name. I think it's kind of interesting. They started as like a iTunes type
Yeah.
competitor and have evolved. So Calm Capital, uh, you know, Marty and I in just our conversations were like, what do we want this to be, And the things that we would talk about is like, well, we don't want to be we don't want to have FOMO, feel like we're missing out on stuff. We don't want to be swayed by those types of things. We don't love the hair on fire kind of culture of, consulting or even private equity, traditional private equity. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I know people who love that environment, right?
Yeah, agree.
Uh, and um, and then we looked at these businesses and the owners who had had businesses for generations, the ones that had successful secessions and all, and they were not swayed by what was going on in the world. They were just kind of even keel. And I grew up on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, which is on the coast. Marty grew up sailing, and so kind of the calm water, kind of idea. So that's where calm capital. So the idea of just, patient, persistent, just like the seas. So that's kind of where the name
I
came
love
from.
it. And so that's stewardship, right? Like it's kind of like
Right.
stewarding through, like, it's like when you're sailing or
Mhm.
whatever. It's very cool. And I want to ask a little bit about your writing. So you're a writer. So what sort of writing do you do? Like when it comes to writing on your website, etc. Like, yeah, like what's your focus?
Yeah, it's evolved over the I've had that website since 2008. So there's a lot of posts on there. Mainly business reflections. When I started, it was when I was going out on my own in marketing, so there was a lot of marketing stuff on there, just to get kind of thought process and thought leadership type stuff out there. Over the last several years, it's kind of just been like public, hey, here's kind of what I'm learning. I kind of there's a quote I love that talks about discipleship is uh long obedience in the same direction. And just this idea of being kind of a lifelong apprentice was kind of how so it's just more of like a sharing of stuff I'm learning and that kind of thing that I wanted to pass along for whoever, but really for me. And then if anybody wrote it, and then I kind of think about like you read about these great biographies of people, and I don't pretend that I'll be there, but a lot of what families know about their great grandparents or whatever from their journals. And like we don't really do that as much anymore. So I thought, well, at least this would give some, record with my kids if they
Yeah,
ever
that's
care to see
cool.
what was dad doing. But and then in the last probably 2 years, I've been doing a lot more like memoir and fiction. I've been getting into a lot more fiction because as every copywriter, I wanted to write for TV or novels or whatever. So I've been writing more like short stories and stuff like that. So that's mainly the writing. But at Calm Capital, we do letters for leaders. So we write letters to our leadership, which we make public and those types of things. So I'd say it's about 50-55% business related and cultural and
I love that.
learning.
Letters for leaders. What do you say in the letters for leaders? Like, is it just a letter like about their leadership or yeah?
So it's basically the conversations Marty and I have about the things that we're coaching our leaders on or the businesses that we steward. We then just, if there's things that we feel like are relevant to everyone in the organization, and when I say organization, are through the handful of companies that we only have 50-ish employees. I mean, that's the other thing I like about software companies. You can serve a lot of clients with not a huge team. So we kind of
Yeah.
like this aspect. But so it's just like stuff like some of it's very practical, like processes and things like that. Marty's great at systems and frameworks. Like I'm good at kind of making a mess, and then he's good at operationalizing it.
I love.
Um, and so a lot of it is around the operational stuff, but then just like thought process around um, high performing teams or some of the stuff that we've been talking about, success and goal setting and just our kind of view on how to go about that that's consistent with our values and mission.
It's a great way to frame it, isn't it? Have the letters.
Mhm.
David, two last questions for you. What are
Yeah.
you seeing as the biggest? opportunities in business right now? Like as a founder, as an entrepreneur, like for businesses, what are you seeing as the biggest opportunity? I mean, I'm saying that versus challenge because challenge equals an
Yeah,
opportunity, right?
sure, sure. Um, well, I think a lot of businesses are uh, good businesses are going to be fine with the future, right? Because if you're providing a good product or service, but I do think like the changes in technology and all those kinds of things have added a lot of uncertainty. And so I think one of the opportunities is I would say the thing that we've had to learn the most, this is, I promise I'll get
Yeah,
to
it's okay.
respond. The um, what we've learned. So Marty and I came from as being operators to being investors, which I still have a hard time saying that, but that is kind of the choice we made with Calm Capital. Uh, Investors are typically not great with uncertainty, right? Like you want sure things. Like I
Yeah.
don't want like whatever Warren Buffett's rule, right? Rule number one, don't lose money, right? Rule number two, see rule number one or whatever. Well, that's hard to do in a landscape where there's a lot of uncertainty. I think one of the opportunities right now is if you can be comfortable with uncertainty and understand the difference between um like certain pulling for the words here, but the difference between like uncertainty and uh like trends, if you will. So like cycles, businesses
Yeah.
go up and down. There's always cycles to things, rhythms. Um, I think if you can balance between like and be comfortable with a level of uncertainty that maybe hasn't been seen as much as there is right now, with kind of like the rhythms of just good business practices, I think there's a ton of opportunities. And we like the opportunity we see, which I think anybody could go after this, is that there's a lot of people who are getting to a point where they are need to retire, want to retire. There's someone else that they would like to be done running the
Yeah.
thing
Hand
that
it
they're
over.
running
Pass the
and have
baton over.
someone to keep it going. And I think there's a ton of opportunity across multiple industries with that. But in general, if you're leading a business, looking to buy a business, or working at a company, and if you can create a tolerance for discomfort around the uncertainty of what's going to happen next, and combine that with some, kind of solid principles, I think there's a lot of opportunity for you.
It's very cool. And then one last question, or it's not even a question, it's one tip, one golf tip. I'm going to use the golf analogy. If you could give anyone a tip in life, leadership, or business that was some sort of golfing mastery tip, what would it be?
So a golf master tip that would apply to business.
Life, leadership, or business?
Yeah, well, I know like looking at the work that you're doing now with helping leaders kind of find flow states and like get into kind of the zone, if you will. Like that's one of the big things. And I coach a high school and middle school golf teams in my local community, and that's always a question. Like, how do we get in the zone, right? And I think, and I'm going to say this as a tip, but I also would love your feedback if you have found something different. But it's hard, like flow state or getting into the zone or whatever. People think it's I don't know, like you happen into it, but I think there's a lot more like practical front end things that you can do that give you the best chance to get into that type of state where you're kind of operating. So like in golf, we have like a pre-shot routine where before you hit a golf shot, we have I coach my players on kind of these four steps that allow you to control the controllables, right? So it's like you pick a target. Anybody you can control picking a target. You can control picking the right golf club and getting set up correctly. So like those are knowns and controllables. Then you can swing without fear and accept the results, right? So those are the things you can control in a golf shot. I feel like in business, there is a pre-shot routine or a some sort of warm up routine. I had a guy I used to play college golf with. He became a performance coach named Jared Tendler, and he talks about warm up routines and cool down routines for athletes and high performers. And I feel like there's like these practical things. Like for me, like I have a fairly simple warm up kind of routine, morning routine, if you will, that I do in the mornings that I can control that. I can't necessarily control anything else that happens that day, but I can control those things, which give me the best chance to kind of get into a state where I can perform at my best.
I love it. Yeah, it's no,
So,
it's so true. Like I created my methodology, the formless methodology for that very reason, which is the learn piece, which is learn what's not serving you. So it's almost like, for example, get rid of, subtract out what is causing the cognitive overload. So you talk about your morning. How do you power yourself up in the morning so you're giving yourself your best chance in the day to get into that flow state, the ability to be able to, you can control some of that. If you're getting up straight away and getting straight on your phone and looking at everything and creating the overload, you're never going to get into that effortless, kind of
mhm.
creativity or, getting into the strategic, getting into the zone. So it's for me, it's about learning, being aware, self-awareness of, all right, how do I set myself up? What do I need to get remove from my load to then be able to reimagine, create, or shape the kind of the way I would like my day to go to be able to then access or get into that flow state. And then it's a continuous and implement, test and implement. It's that relearn, but ensuring you have those active recovery moments so that you can go again. So I love it because it is practical, right? You can't just jump into flow like when you've got like all this stuff on your mind. Like we're flowing right now and we're running over, but we're in this flowing conversation because we've both come into it. It's not scripted. I haven't come into this podcast with you overloaded with, I've got to ask David all these different questions. I'm just allowing the conversation to flow. I haven't given you a set lot of questions that you have to come here answered with.
Yeah.
We're just speaking before we're thinking. Do you know what I mean? So I think that that's part of it, like having that ability to be able to subtract what's, not serving you so that you can be able to get into it. David, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I feel like I could keep talking to you, and there's that calming picture behind you. Like I feel really calm. Like
Oh, good. Well, hey, I know we're running over 30 seconds, 45 seconds. Can I ask you a question? Just because I'm, again, just so impressed with how prolific you've been since you started this. Any patterns or trends that you're seeing with the kind of investors or entrepreneurs that you've
yes,
you've talked to
so
that,
many. You're. It's like that's keeping me awake at night. I'm like, I
yeah,
need
give
to
me
set.
one. So, because I don't want
No,
to,
yeah, it's a
yeah,
good
just
one.
one.
Oh gosh, there's so many. So a lot of patterns, like in terms of persistence, has been coming up a lot. The persistence, the need to have tenacity and grit. There's power in this pause, the power in the pause. Like it's less about rush, 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 hustle. It's like how do we pause more to get the result we're actually looking for? From a VC perspective, what I'm finding really interesting is that we're at this really interesting point in time where it's almost like there's a new version of VC coming through with people like yourself and other businesses that are looking at the ecosystem and how do you make it impactful and conscious and like you talk about this stewardship, it's not just about that hustle and like the I guess from a it's not all just around the success as we knew it. There's this new shaping of success coming through. um Leadership is really interesting too, in terms of like, listening to people and what they're talking about leadership. Like there's this need to be more soulful and more empathetic and the ability to lead with what I'm calling and terming as this presence, this purpose, and this performance. It's all interconnected, right? And the people ultimately at the end of the day. So just I need to write a book on this. I need to share
Yeah,
my share like learnings out there. It's like piling up and I need to get it out into the world. I'm probably not explaining
for
myself that
seeing.
well, but there's a lot. I'm a lot I'm learning. It's like a big formless research
Yeah.
experiment I've been doing. So
Well, I'll love to. I look forward to seeing what after you have a chance to kind of compile and distill to see what comes of it. So thank you
no,
for
thank you, David. How do we find out more about you? Where we find your stories from?
yeah. I
Calm
mean,
Capital.
calmcapital.com and then davidhorne.me, davidhorne.me. Those are my two most common places.
Awesome. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, David. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. Bee Formless is all around reshaping life, leadership, and business, and it's been a real joy having you on the show.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Thank you.